Welcome back, my quarantine questers. Hopefully you're all able to distract yourself with something to do while locked away in your homes. You can even listen to some of my videos to help pass the time. So we are returning to Castle Bravo XVC's series on Ross. This is actually the story that follows the love story. When I find all the Ross stories are online, I'll be sure to make a playlist and put it in the description below. Anyway, let's get into the story. In r/RPG horror stories, player won't stop climbing walls in the middle of combat. Gets angry when he keeps missing combat. Oh, Ross, I've talked about you so much lately. One thing I will admit to being absolutely impressed with by Ross was his ability to stick to his convictions. When he sets his mind on something, he will fasten a kung fu grip so tight onto it that no amount of reality will buck him off. He will ride his desires and delusions into even hell itself. I know this to be true, as he has dragged me into it more than once. The first D&D character Ross ever played was a teeny tiny Japanese ninja girl. The second D&D character Ross ever played was a teeny tiny Japanese monk cat girl. We never did manage to remember the name he had given to either character, as they were just a mouthful of Japanese names that my brain mercifully refused to allow entry into my memory. It was just as well, because even though one was played in a 2nd edition Greyhawk inspired homebrew, and the other was played in 3rd edition Eberron inspired homebrew, they were completely indiscernible from each other in any way, having the exact same personality as each other. Which is, to clarify, no personality. I would say they just had his personality, but that would be too generous a characterization of the sock puppets he ostensibly roleplayed. No, Ross's personality began and ended with Japanese fetishization, Star Wars, The Matrix, and Gem and the Holograms. But that's at least something. The wiser amongst you, i.e., anyone that no longer eats paste, can differentiate between an interest and a personality, and may be thinking to themselves at this point, hey, those aren't personalities, those are just things someone likes. That'd be like saying someone's personality was pizza, or the smell of freshly folded laundry. And to you, I would say, you are absolutely correct, but shush, I'm trying to tell a story here. Jeez. Being right isn't the point. Reality seldom found cause to impose itself into Ross's thought process. Ross found a way to make Gem and the Holograms a personality. It was outrageous. Truly, truly outrageous. But despite his metaphysical accomplishment, most of those personality features couldn't easily transition to D&D. So his characters' personalities were just hollowed out versions of himself. Like someone had scooped out Ross's insides and made a frowny-faced jack-o'-lantern filled with melted cheese and sour cream, instead of a birthday candle. We called them Kitty. Despite this, Ross fancied each character, in turn, quite the tactician. And while I wouldn't call him Sun Tzu, crawling kitty style has become a strategy synonymous with Ross's philosophy of combat, and will survive through the ages unmarked as a testament to his incredible tactical genius. I had blown up a large island. It wasn't nearby, but parts of the island nation rained down along the continent, sowing destruction and discord. As part of the plot we never got around to resolving, and as a way of doing some interesting encounters. A tree ant with a magically tainted anvil embedded in its trunk, as an example. In random and interesting places. Submitted for the approval of the RPG Horror Stories subreddit, I call this story The Tale of the Dumbest Tactician Decision I've Been Privy. So, imagine a church. Not a big one. Like a small country village church. Now, explode that sucker. Imagine the roof blew off of it, like it was in a Donald Duck cartoon, and that the roof flew thousands of kilometers through the air before landing with a kerflunk in the middle of nowhere, partially embedded into the dirt at an angle. So, the front of the roof is jutting out, and then slowly sinks into the earth towards the back. It's about 15 feet high from the roof to the ceiling at the front of the hole, and about 2 feet high from ceiling to dirt at the back. Kind of like an apocalyptic lean-to. And imagine the denizens of said church are haunting their newly exploded dirt hut as ghasts. A nice little encounter. Should be straightforward. Well, my intrepid heroes, being the upstanding stalwart figures of a burgeoning legend, aren't gonna pass a bunch of pissed off undead buttholes and risk them spreading evil and whatnot in their stead. Understandably, they decide to go stab them. Roll initiative. Ross goes somewhere in the middle. First few people walk up into the church and start with their fisticuffs. Then, along comes Ross. Never one to pass up an opportunity to ninja. Oh, how did I wish there was occasion he would. He seized his kung fu grip with a titillating idea, dragging us all into our own collective hell for the next few rounds of combat. With the careful measure of a grandmaster chess player, he announced the surefire strategy that will lead him to bingo. I don't play chess, but you shout out bingo when you get crowned, right? "I'm going to climb the wall," he says in triumph. Ross? Buddy? Why? From a standing hop, you can brush your fingers against the roof. Why on earth would you need to climb the walls, just as combat is starting? "I'm going to climb along the ceiling and drop down behind them so I can surprise them from the back." Okay. This was my fault, I figured. I hadn't explained the setup correctly. Ross isn't that dumb. I just did a bad job painting a mental picture. Let's back up a second and go over this one more time so that you can decide what you want to do. Ross listens to me, nods. I see he understands the words I am saying, and that the order I put them in makes my intentions clear. Great. Ross, what are you going to do? "I'm going to climb along the ceiling and drop down behind them so I can surprise them from the back." Okay. I'm looking around the table and seeing a lot of stupid glances being levied against an oblivious Ross. It's not just me. That's good. I was worried I was having a stroke for a second. But you know what? I get it. It's a weird setup. Even describing something sometimes can't quite convey an idea accurately. So I literally draw him a darn picture. There. That. This is what you have to work with. That little stick figure there, with the stinky lines over him, that's where the bad guys are. See this stick figure with the sword? That's where you guys are. See how much headspace there is not the more you go in? Good. You understand now, yes? Alright. Now that we're all on the same page, Ross, please, tell me what you're doing and don't disappoint me. At this point, I feel like I've correctly set your expectations in who Ross is and who Ross isn't. I don't feel like I need to draw you a darn picture. I'm just going to leave a nice, long, blank space, absent of words so that you can say it yourself. Okay, so we're all frustrated with him together. Despite what a catty jerk I've been to Ross in absentia here on the subreddit, I tried not to be a butthole in real life, despite my feelings. I didn't mean to be condescending, but I was when I asked him, "How the floop do you think you'll sneak past them? The roof is 4 inches above your head back there." In hindsight, I think that was what caused him to tighten his grip. His stupid grip on that stupid idea. Like, no one's actually that idiotic, right? Like, regardless of how well I worded the description or drew a picture, no one could actually think that they could sneak over a group of ghasts in the middle of combat with only a 4-inch gap to squeeze through, right? It has to be that I offended him, and he was going to show me what for. Like how a little kid will knock a birthday cake to the ground. because if he doesn't get a corner piece, then no one gets any piece. A DM can't actually force someone not to be an idiot, so I accepted it. His teammates didn't. They took up the futile call to reason. Whatever. One by one, the table just kind of learned to accept that this was going to be a thing. Here's the thing about gas. They flooping stink. You gotta make a save versus poison at a -2 or start uncontrollably retching. Ross couldn't have been more aware of this, as he had seen some of his comrades moments before fail their throws. Undaunted, Ross goes to climb the wall, and the predictable happens. Well, now he's gotta make his climbing checks at a penalty, because retching and gagging isn't exactly conducive to parkour. But if you think that a little penalty would prompt Ross to reconsider his decisions, maybe I do need to draw you a picture after all. So he starts trying and failing to climb the wall to reach the ceiling. In the meantime, combat abounds. Eventually, he gets up there, and then starts climbing upside down. And because I'm sick of arguing with him, I accept his reasoning that surely his ninja would have trained at climbing a freaking angled and arched ceiling upside down as part of her training, so I don't give him any further penalties. He's accomplished his goal. But it's about that time that he's hanging onto the ceiling, crawling along like an inverted turtle at their shoulder height, when he gets huffy as I tell him that one of the ghasts attacks. The gall of me. I mean, don't I know that he's climbing along the ceiling sneakily? He had asked if he could roll stealth, granted, and I let him roll. But roll or no, I explained that all the stealth in the world could not hide someone being at eye level with the person 6 feet in front of them. And so, in a huff, he finally decides to just hop down and attack. The other thing about ghasts? They paralyze when they attack. And no, being upside down with all of your limbs firmly planting you in place directly in front of the thing that wants to kill you does not make you harder to hit. Shocking, I know. So Ross gets paralyzed. Not that it mattered much, as combat ended the round after he dropped to the dirt like a paralyzed stone. At least he was involved in combat. Yay! A couple of years later, my friend Rod, who had been playing a cleric in that very topsy-turvy session, was DMing a game. I was playing one of my favorite player characters in my life of gaming, but that's a story for another subreddit. Ross was playing his cat monk now, and the party had just arrived to the brilliant conclusion that the old man wearing a black cloak who hired us to retrieve a book must, in fact, be an evil necromancer. The evidence was pretty conclusive. He was wearing a black cloak, and the paladin had detected something evil from me, and I was holding the book, so it had to be the book, I assured everyone. Because the NPC is smarter than us, he cast a wall of fire between us and him in the tavern we were to meet him, bisecting the main room in two. As we're rolling initiative, we're all trying to figure out how to get to the necromancer, because that's what he totally was, I swear. Some are considering rounding the outside of the building. The tougher of our numbers were considering leaping through the flame. Ross wins initiative. I'm going to leap to the ceiling and crawl over the flames. In that moment, everyone at the table that wasn't Ross collectively became one. For a moment, our minds found solace in the face of stupidity, and we melded into a hive mind. And it was as one that 5 open palms smacked 5 respective foreheads in disbelief. Not this crap again. Rod quickly assures Ross that the flames reached the ceiling, and still Ross intends to climb the wall. Someone points out that he can climb the stairs to the balcony that overlooks the room to reach the ceiling instead of climbing the wall, and still Ross will climb. Of reason and pleading and incredulity we levied at Ross. Unchanged was his conviction. But Ross's cat girl was a much lower level than his ninja girl, and so when he went to climb the wall, unlike those years before, he failed and kept failing. But failure wasn't an option for him. Oh no, And so he kept trying. Something like 4 straight melee rounds. Arrows and spells are being fired through the wall in either direction. And in the periphery of the firefight, it was like in those cartoons, where a cat climbs up a wall or a cliff, and then slides back down with lines of claw marks, comically left in its wake. Except it was depressing. To our credit, one of our number eventually realized the wall of fire was illusionary, and that the necromancer had escaped unscathed and undetected. Right around the same time that Ross finally reached the ceiling and discovered for himself that he could not, in fact, climb over the flames. I'm not going to go over every instance of Ross's failure to climb walls during combat. He never learned his lesson, but it didn't happen every single combat. But it happened enough. That's not the point of this story. They say insanity is repeating the same action and expecting a different result. Well, we kept letting Ross play with us and kept expecting him to not act like a total knob. No, the point of this story isn't to list every little quibble. The point is to express that some horror stories are your own darn fault. And yet, despite all that I've already shared, we still expected a different result. And to be fair, Ross had never TPK'd an entire campaign before. We'll get to those stories in a bit. TLDR? Stupid keeps stupiding up the side of the walls, and I still haven't gotten over it. There we go, our third Ross story. I absolutely love these stories. Castle Bravo's point at the end about how sometimes you as a group can collectively show compassion to a player, showing that in turn you are trying to be better, or thinking that that player has changed, when in reality, sometimes you are all being played as fools. As he says, making the same choices and expecting a different result. Thank you all for watching the video, and I really hope that you subscribe so that way you can hear the next story of Ross. Until next time, hope you feel inspired.